The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
Hooray for Hollywood, where stars are living large, in mansions with their servants and their credit cards in charge, with fame that's fleeting, but the egos never change, where everyone's a genius, except the ones who really arrange. Hooray for Hollywood, where the scandals always sell, where every whispered secret is a new tabloid's tell. Oh, how we adore the endless red carpet galore. Hooray for Hollywood, where less is always more.
Yes, indeedy, less is always more. Ladies
That's
and gentlemen,
the philosophy of us, and that is not the philosophy of the movie we're talking about, but
here to talk about a celebration of excess.
in so many ways.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Rad Legend Broadcasting premier podcast. Damn you, Hollywood, the mothership! And here's your host, jolly old Saint Robert Winfree. How do you do, sir?
If I'm ever sainted, I will have to try and change my first name. I don't know why, but something about that doesn't sound right.
Saint
Of course,
Robert.
I'm not worried about becoming a saint. That's a purely Catholic thing. So, but yeah, Mark, it's just you and me. We couldn't drag anyone else to talk about this movie.
As God intended.
You're not God. We've talked about this before.
Oh, damn it. Yeah. As many chuckleheads as want to be on these podcasts as of late, not a single person, not even close, volunteered for this.
That is very true. And tonight, if you're wondering, we're talking about Red 1.
Red 1 standing by. Red Fox standing by. Red
October standing by.
Red 1 is a 2024 American action-adventure Christmas fantasy comedy film. Directed by Jake Kasdan and written by Chris Morgan.
Okay, directed by a broom. Well, let's start there. Directed by your generic bag of door, Alan Smithy. The Ratnertron 5000. Like this, there's no direction here.
If you want to know who attempted to direct this movie, this guy did Jumanji: The Next Level, Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, Sex Tape, Bad Teacher, Walk Hard: The Dewey Cox Story, The TV Set, Orange County, and Zero Effect. Yes, indeedy.
This is the guy you hire when you have someone who can do moderate stage managing. That's really all he does.
Yeah,
he's one step above Paul Feig.
He's only done the two Jumanjis, but I thought this was like The Rock's personal director. I had to double check.
Probably. Like, okay, Rock, you're not a member of the Directors Guild. You can't actually direct yourself. You need somebody. So he pulls this guy like Mankind pulling Mr. Sacco out of his crotch. He pulls this guy out of his back pocket and goes, here, he's a real director. Like, I'm a real director.
I would not be surprised if he pulled him out of his crotch. And written by Chris Morgan. From an original story by Garcia, the film follows the head of the North Pole Security, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, teaming up with the notorious hacker, Captain America, Chris Evans, in order to locate a kidnapped Schillinger, a.k.a. Santa Claus, J.K. Simmons.
I knew it. I knew you couldn't have gone with anything else for him, and I'll talk about that in a minute or two.
On Christmas Eve, Lucy Liu, Kiernan Shipka of the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina fame, Bonnie Hunt, Nick Kroll, Christopher Hivurich, and Wesley Kimmel also star. The film is seen as the first of a Christmas-themed franchise. No, it won't. Produced by Amazon MGM Studios in association with Seven Bucks Production, which is The Rock, Chris Morgan Productions, and The Detective Agency. Red One was released internationally by Warner Brothers Pictures on November 6th and was released in the U.S. by Amazon MGM Studios through Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer on November 15th, 2024. So They spent a metric ton, like the gross national product of Portugal, on advertisement for this movie. Like they have been bumping this thing since the summer.
Here's the thing about this movie, and
Mhm.
before we have to talk about this to set up, even talking about the plot. There's background here that's very important. This thing has been delayed quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Allegedly because of the writer's strike, though I find that hard to believe having seen the movie. That's overly harsh, so I apologize. I shouldn't be that harsh on this thing. There were a lot of production issues because The Rock is apparently a giant pain to work with, especially when his ego is the biggest one on set.
You would think for a guy whose movies don't always do great, like he gets a lot of artificial credit for shit he did that did $1 billion that were ensembles. But when you look, I think we did the math one.
You and I have done this. In the general trend with The Rock is he'll release 3 movies a year.
Mhm.
One will be a big success, one will be a moderate success, and one will kind of blow up on the launch pad. Is the general trend.
And about half of his, where he's the star and he's not part of an ensemble, are successful. The other half are the ones that blow up on the launch pad. The ensembles tend to do better more often than not. So, like, I mean, let's throw Black Adam out there as a really great example of this.
Oof.
Yeah. Did DC Films no favors?
It ended, dude. That was the end of the DC films as it was at the time. That was it.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying The Rock killed it. There was a lot that was wrong there before The Rock came along.
In a parallel universe, Black Adam does well and The Rock takes over DC, not James Gunn. But we live in the universe where, as my son pointed out, Donald Trump became president for a second time. Oh, and what was the other? Oh, and Jake Paul beat Mike Tyson in a boxing match. He's convinced we're living in the evil parallel universe.
Your son, much as I appreciate some of the general sentiment, is woefully mistaken.
Leave him alone. He's 10.
That's what I'm not picking on him.
That was
I was 10 once.
That was witty and insightful for a 10-year-old. Have you talked to 10-year-olds?
Yes, I have, and by 10-year-old standards, yes, that's well above average.
Moving on.
But even if it was any 10-year-old, I would have said the same thing. Like, I appreciate that, but here's where you're wrong. And I'm not going to go into that lecture here because it would derail us from talking about the movie.
So The Rock is a giant pain in the ass.
Yeah, he's just a pain to work with. Now, he's one of these guys who is better when there's who's the other one who's really guilty? Okay. But by way of example, different scenario, different person, but same kind of thing. So Joss Whedon, kind of a tool, right? All of the movies he's done that he's been very successful on are largely because there's at least one person on set whose ego and whose clout is bigger than his. You know why he was You know why he was able to kind of make the Avengers work? Because Samuel L. Jackson was there. And that man has no time for your crap.
Yeah.
Hey, so Whedon could have bullied pretty much everyone else on that set. Right. Samuel L. Jackson's like, I'm sorry, what did you just say?
So moving this forward, there were production issues. There were strike issues. There were issues with The Rock not showing up on time. So the budget for this, which was and then this was originally supposed to be straight to streaming. This was going to go straight to Amazon Prime, but then The Rock was like, "Oh no, Oppenheimer, IMAX. This is what we must do." And so what started out as a moderately budgeted straight to streaming Christmas comedy became a fucking Marvel movie with the budget to match. And we'll talk about that when we get to the money because it's its own conversation.
Yeah, it is.
This is going in as much as I'm going to talk about this momentarily. As much as I love the movie, this thing is going into the fire pit along with so many other giant bombs this year. It was made in a factory, a bomb factory. It's a bomb. I've been watching a lot of TikTok lately where they put in little cartoons in these NFL recaps, and that's a big one that they use whenever there's a huge like long yards pass. You know, a bomb, a Hail Mary. My son totally marked out for the SpongeBob reference. He was like, "Oh my god, I did not expect that from you," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's a TikTok thing." Anyway, so we're gonna get into the movie, but before we do, I just, Zach knows what's up. Um, so we were talking before the show started tonight, and I had mentioned in our group chat that I love this movie. I had all kinds of, I had all kinds of feels. My kids loved it. Once we get talking about it, I'll probably come up with some quibbles or criticisms or whatever. But walking out of the movie, I felt an enormous amount of joy. And part of the reason is, unlike every girl I've ever dated ever, I am a fan of Christmas, not Halloween. I absolutely, I absolutely
Weird way to express that, but okay, I'm
every
with you. I'm with you.
single woman, all of them. They're all like, like, oh, I'm different from the average girl. I like Halloween. You all do. Every last one of yous.
Oh,
Um,
you gonna rebel against the system with an ear piercing and maybe a tattoo while you're at it? Like, what are we doing here?
so anyway, um, I don't talk about politics much because it tends to engender fistfights. But as much as I am for a lot of progressive policies, my philosophical point of view tends to lean traditional and conservative. And in the spirit of that, I have always loved Christmas. Christmas is about joy. It's about the bringing of joy. It's about the spirit of giving, helping your fellow man. Those things really resonate with me. They appeal to me in a lot of ways. Um, I don't have a lot of great memories of the last 15 years being married, but the few good memories I have that aren't directly related to my kids are of the Christmas holidays. Say what I will about the ex-wife, she got me into a lot of really fun traditions, like, the night before Christmas, we would actually make reindeer tracks in the house. And not only did we leave out a plate of cookies for Santa, but we also had to leave out carrots for the reindeer.
Oh yeah, gotta have a carrot for Rudolph.
Yeah, things like that. Things I didn't do growing up as a kid because, like, my parents did Christmas, but they didn't really do Christmas. They like, yeah, we'll do a tree and some presents, and by the time I get to be a teenager, it was just like, by the time I got to be a teenager, can you still hear me?
I can hear you. Your camera's frozen.
Okay.
Though.
Yeah, I know my camera's frozen, which I'll reset it in a second. But like, like we did the tree and we would listen to Christmas music, and oh my God, I am famous on this network for my choices and love of Christmas music. We all know Hee Haw, Dominic, the Italian Christmas donkey.
You see, I don't know why you insist that exists.
Yeah, go ahead and vamp on that for just a second.
Okay. Yeah, Mark has been lying to me for a long time over the course of our friendship of the existence of Dominic the Christmas donkey. It's a bit like his insistence that the Beastie Boys have more than one song. I don't know why he insists on this lie that he must try to perpetuate.
All right. So like I was saying, I love Christmas music. Like the giving and receiving of presents as part of bringing joy. I legitimately mean that, because everyone's just like, No, I legitimately like enjoy the spirit of giving. It's not so much what I'm getting as that we're giving to each other. The little bit of Christmas mythology that I did know, and this movie is just latent with it, I enjoyed. I like that sort of thing. But I also, again, like the ideas of traditional family in traditional society. Those things all appeal to me. And a lot of that philosophically is in this movie. And it's so much different than so much that is out there. We made the same point with Space Cadet, where it's becoming rare to see earnestness in movies they're so latent with cynicism these days. So when it
Well,
happens,
cynicism and insecurity are the two big
yeah,
things that drive so many decisions made in both the writing and creation of film and television.
yeah,
And finding a genuine, story, movie, whatever that is devoid of that has become rare. And like many things, I blame Marvel for a big chunk of that, but not exclusively. It's a lot of people taking the wrong lessons from it.
I know I make a lot of sex jokes on here, and I'm known for being like quasi like pervy and misogynistic, and it's part of my shtick.
Quasi.
However, I do enjoy wholesomeness. I like genuinely enjoy a wholesome presentation and will accept it as is. I don't need every look. Sex has its place. Perviness has its place. Grossness, disgustingness. That is up for debate at another time. I believe I believe all of those things have their place, but we shouldn't lose sight of other things that have their place too, like wholesomeness and traditionalism. So I went into Red One just thinking it was going to be big, stupid fun, but I kind of expected like a Farrelly Brothers type comedy. I expected it to be silly. I expected The Rock to be over the top. I expected to be Chris Evans to be a cowardly bag of shit. That was barely redeemable. I expected it to be a very slapsticky, especially with the way that it was marketed. And what I got was a purely joyful, conservative, traditional Christmas mythological action adventure story. Like, it's so unlike anything I've seen in a very long time as a guy who watches a lot of movies that I was absolutely floored and delighted, as were my children. So,
Okay, before I jump into the plot, let me piggyback on that just a hair.
mm-hmm.
Because I was trying to think what this movie reminded me of as I was coming out of it.
Okay.
Because, like you said, there's a lot about this that just isn't well represented in the contemporary filmscape. The closest analog I got to this, and the movie I'm about to reference is much better than this one, and I'll get into why later if you feel like it, but this kind of reminded me of like the 1999 Mummy. It's very
Okay.
It's very straightforward. It's very, and it kind of just like, or what's another one? Maybe like the first Aquaman would be another one that kind of falls into the same vein.
Okay.
It's utterly unpretentious.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it's kind of a throwback to a ethos of filmmaking that just you don't see very much anymore.
Yeah.
And even though I didn't spoiler for my review, I didn't care much for this movie, but I can absolutely appreciate what it is about it that makes people enjoy it. I can also easily appreciate why critics are not enjoying it. So,
yeah, but let me tell you how I don't think super progressivism, super liberalism, relativism is doing Hollywood any favors. One, it's
it
created
does
a
nothing
giant
any favors in general. But
okay, and that is
okay,
a
hang
philosophical
on.
debate for a different arena.
That's an exaggerated perspective because you
Mhm,
threw out three different things there. Two of them, I'd argue, are just net negatives, kind of no matter what. But
mhm.
a whole other
But
discussion.
I don't. But what I was getting to was it's created a giant chasm between the creators and the audience.
Yeah.
And the audience is starting to rebel, and that's why I brought it up.
Mm.
We'll get to it when we get to Rotten Tomatoes, but I'm not surprised the critics are struggling with this because this doesn't reflect their worldview, and their worldview is relativistic. It's relativistic. It is cynical. It is nihilistic. All of those things.
Yep.
And this movie is the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
And we're living in a world now, and we said this in a podcast a few podcasts ago. And then after this, if you have nothing else, we can get into the plot synopsis. 70 years ago, I wasn't born 70 years ago, contrary to popular opinion. But my feeling is that in the go-go days of the 50s, if you had your worldview challenged, maybe you got your chin rubbed the wrong way, but you didn't attack your neighbor, nor did your entire self-being completely collapse and you lash out. People were used to be able to withstand challenges to their worldview. Now, people who challenge your worldview should be put into concentration camps, is the going philosophy, and anyone whose worldview is challenged lashes out violently. Whether, it's accusations of any ism you like that reflects the argument, or actual violence. So I can see why because this challenges the worldview of everybody who makes up the entertainment industry, from creators to critics. And these people have skin as soft as tissue paper, and it makes me sad and sick. Boy, if there was ever a podcast to bang your shoe about, it's fucking the Christmas movie with The Rock in it.
Well, I don't disagree with you, and part of the problem is a lot of people have, and this is a general complaint, this is not a one side or the other thing, for the record.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I'm really glad it's me and you tonight, because nobody else would have been able to keep up with this conversation. Alexis would have killed herself on the podcast. She would have she would have been listening. She'd have been on her phone. Keep going. Sorry.
Be nice. The first one was more accurate. She's much better about paying attention. Then that's a little bit of an outdated opinion that you bring up on occasion. So the impetus to get out of this conversation anyway she could, though, that's more accurate. That's not a shot at Alexis either, by the way. But the number of people who have wrapped their entire identity around...
Speaking of people who crumble under their worldview being challenged. Keep going.
But the number of people who make bizarrely, I shouldn't say bizarrely, I do understand this, even if I think it's stupid, take a facet of their worldview or their personality, and suddenly this is now core to their identity. And any challenge to that suddenly becomes you are challenging their being.
Yeah.
And they react badly. And this is also wrapped up in the, speech is violence movement that, boy, what a stupid thought experiment that turned out to be by a lot of people, right? Because if speech is violence, physical violence is justified, is it not? Because violence is violence. And then we get to riots and nothing good. Anyway, Fred won. So on to the happiness of the Christmas movie.
On to the happiness and joy.
We will get away from the social commentary, guys, I promise. So this follows a couple of characters. We open with a bit of a prologue where one of our protagonists, Jack O'Malley, is a young boy, and he's already a bit of he doesn't have a dad, and he knows Santa isn't real and is trying to ruin Christmas for everyone because he's just one of those people. And his dad or his uncle tries to set him straight. And then we flash forward to Chris Evans as a slimy human being engaging in all kinds of chicanery. He breaks into a geological survey, the one that tracks seismic activity, so that he can track some of their readings. He steals candy from a baby on his way out of this whole thing. He burns down a gazebo. He hides a fire extinguisher. He just is. This is a comical, and I mean that in a good way, introduction to a villainous character, and even steals candy from a baby as he's walking away with the fire in the background.
It was a very Gru, Despicable Me kind of a thing.
A little bit less redeemable, but yes.
Yeah.
Like, the introduction to Gru is kind of an annoying, I don't care about all of you, but also because, the world around me isn't all that great. Yeah. The man freeze-raised his way to the front of a line at, Starbucks, and we've all kind of been there.
Not a day I don't wake up wishing I had telekinesis so I could just wave cars out of my way.
Yeah.
Or
Then we
throw them
transfer
into the
over to
sun.
looking at The Rock, who plays Callum Drift, the guy in charge of the ELF.
Get it? Get it?
There's a lot about the heart of the writing in this movie that I appreciate. There's a lot of the specifics that I just wanted. I struggled. He is helping prepare, because we're a couple of days away from Christmas. He's helping prepare Santa Claus for the big event. Oh, yeah, no, they're at a mall, because the real Santa Claus occasionally wants to go meet with the kids and be a mall Santa and be, because he loves his job. And we find out this is the real Santa. They go back to the North Pole, and in the process of getting there, they trigger a minor seismic event that lets degenerate gambler and all-around loser Chris Evans. I'm sorry, his character. Oh, right. Same thing. Sorry, Chris Evans annoys me as a person.
Okay. I am not here to here to hear about yet another one of your Hollywood feuds. You have a
Fair
list
enough.
of rivals Chris fucking Jericho's.
Ow.
Yeah. You
Okay.
have an enemies list. It's a little alarming.
Point taken. I will get into better shape and not let my chest turn into Kofi Kingston, and I will definitely not overstay my welcome by a decade or so, you fat.
He means Chris Jericho, not me.
Yes. That was all, unironically, all on Chris Jericho. I love Mark.
People are just like, why would you do that? No, he meant Chris Jericho.
I really did. So we see Santa getting ready for the Christmas rush, and Cal is tendering his resignation. It's kind of the sort of thing that's going on with him. I don't have it anymore. I no longer believe in the mission of Christmas. Is kind of the bulk of it. I've been here for a while.
He's disillusioned. He's disenchanted.
Yeah.
And when he says it's not the kids that I have a problem with, as bad or as good as the kids are kids. The adults have made, in a very Jingle All the Way vibe, the adults have made this holiday unbearable, and I need to do something else with my life.
And I appreciate, this goes to the characterization of him that I actually do appreciate. Part of what he's saying is, this job is too important to have someone here who's not committed to it.
Yeah.
And that I actually do find kind of to be both an understandable and an admirable sentiment, because you could have made this character very unlikable.
I don't want to derail your plot synopsis, but there's one of the other things that I picked up about the movie, and I don't know if you did too, not to get Acolyte vibes going yet again, but the religious subtext of the movie, I have lost the faith. I don't belong here anymore. This is a job where faith should be unchallenged and unbridled, and I don't have it. And there is the priest, there is the chaplain, there is your religious figure going, we all question our faith at some point, but that doesn't mean we should walk away from it. And he's saying, I don't agree. I have lost the faith, and you deserve somebody who's 100% committed to it, which deeply resonated with me. Believe it or not, I don't ascribe to a structured religious institution, but I absolutely believe in, unlike my father, I absolutely believe in the power of faith and traditional religion. I think it's important. I think it's important to believe in something bigger than yourself. And when you stop believing in something, bigger than yourself, and you put yourself in the position of God, you can wander so far from the path, you end up in places you're going to hate yourself in. And I think that's a little bit of what the movie is talking about in those parts.
Thankfully, because this is a lighthearted Christmas movie, it doesn't delve deeply into that, but that's what it's touching on. Just very briefly to your point, there's a quote, I think it's usually attributed to Chesterton, that people who don't believe in God don't believe in nothing, they'll believe anything.
Yeah.
is more. And Chesterton said a lot of smart things. If he didn't say that one, I can see why it's attributed to him.
Let me tell you how I am fighting the urge to make 10,000 jokes right now about things I know people believe in and not traditional religion. And I would like to continue having a social life, so I'm shutting up now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, appreciate.
Wink.
I understand. No, I understand. So yeah, that's kind of where we are. And now he's like, okay, I will get you through this Christmas, and then I'm now literally 1 day away from retirement because we must have the meme.
Danny Glover walks past going, "Stop stealing my shit."
Danny Glover walks past and goes, "I'm too old for this cameo," and then walks away. It's
moving on. All right, we
got yeah. So that's the basic, and so that's kind of our setup. And The Rock's ready to about walk away from this because he is disillusioned with the whole thing. Chris Evans sends the coordinates of the seismic event he detected to whoever was paying him to get all of this. And then the people he paid show up at the dome that encases the North Pole. And this is where things go sideways. Santa Claus goes missing. And there's a big chase through the streets of the North Pole. And then a plane flies away. And now Santa Claus has been kidnapped. So naturally, the clandestine organization that is secretly a global powerhouse responsible for all of the mythological beings is headed by Lucy Liu. And she shows up and says, what the heck just happened? And well, we're missing Santa Claus, and oh boy, this is bad. So now we have to figure out what happened. And their only lead is Chris Evans. So they go pick him up. And he says, okay, but I don't know how much I can help. And why is there mythological stuff? And is that the Headless Horseman? And why do you have a talking polar bear? And this is all a little bit much for me. I was content just being a giant bag of dicks and being kind of a deadbeat dad to my son who's living with his mother who's married to a good guy. And I don't think I need to be a part of that anymore. And I was content with my terrible life of being a degenerate gambler and in debt and making the world a worse place. And but he's able to give them a little bit of a clue. So we go to Aruba, where we have a fight scene on a beach, because of course we do. And then we meet a guy responsible for the single weirdest series of line readings I have ever seen in a movie in my entire life.
Oh, that had to have been a fun scene to shoot.
This is why I say there was no direction.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no way a director sat there, watched that, and went, yes, my vision come to life. No way. But this middleman that they find in Aruba gives them the name of the person who hired him, who is Grilla, the Christmas witch. And despite being told, saying her name is a bad thing, Chris Evans sees it spelled out in the sand and goes, Grilla?
Yeah.
He's an idiot. For all of his competence in certain areas, this character is a moron.
Sure.
So Grilla possesses the body of this poor schmuck, who then proceeds to give, again, the world's weirdest line readings. I heard that this clip is floating online from I tend to think a relatively poor horror movie called Heretic, and it features Hugh Grant doing a Jar Jar Binks impression, and it's the weirdest thing.
Like legit Jar Jar Binks?
Yes.
That's funny.
You can find it if you're so inclined.
And if you'd like to hear a review on that, Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do, Neil and Chris did that.
Heretic? Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll get me on a tangent if I start talking about that, so I'm leaving it alone. Gives the world's weirdest line reading, and then snowmen drive up in a ice cream truck out of the ocean. We get another action sequence. The snowmen are defeated by taking the carrots that are their noses away, because then they're not snowmen anymore, they're just snow. Lucy Liu shows back up. They do actual investigative work and like, hey, let's track unregistered magic usage. And they find that conjuration magic has been used in the vicinity of Krampus and his compound, because Krampus has a bit of a truce with Santa after their dispute. So Cal and Chris Evans go there, and they find Krampus engaging in power slap, world's biggest sport, Mark. Huge numbers. More numbers than all the major sporting leagues combined, done right here. How could this movie have failed? Let me count the ways.
Right.
While there, Chris Evans tries to steal from Krampus. This is a very bad idea, as one might expect. But what they get is the knowledge that Grilla has taken back a magical snow globe designed to imprison you, like Rapunzel in a tower or Sleeping Beauty in the Field of Thorns. Like this is just meant to isolate you. And what she's trying to do is siphon the power from Santa Claus, use a duplicating machine to create 1 billion of these things, and then send them on Christmas to everyone who has ever been on the naughty list. Comprising, I imagine, something like 95% of the human population would be my guess.
Yeah. Yep.
That's her dastardly plan, and she's trying to get it to work the whole time. So they now kind of have figured out what's going on. The Rock has a little bit of an epiphany, but then we drive up on a player piano in the middle of a road. And what they've done is they have sent one of their other prototype snow globes to Chris Evans' kid. He FaceTimes with Chris Evans right about then to complain about the snow globe so we can all see him pick it up and activate it and then get transported back into wherever the witch is, because we're not supposed to know where that is just yet. Chris Evans has another snow globe there, and he grabs it because he's going to go be with his kid, and he just tells The Rock to find him. The Rock then has kind of put together that the only place they could be that has the industrial capacity to do what she's trying to do is still the North Pole. So all the getting Santa out of there was a bunch of smoke and mirrors. They just knocked him out in his residence room and dragged him down into the basement and started siphoning his energy. And everything else we've been doing from till now is a giant waste of time. One of my complaints with this movie. So he heads back. He and Lucy Liu team up because they don't have actual agents of this or anything. It must be Lucy Liu and The Rock. They go back into the North Pole. We get our big kind of action set pieces. Chris Evans and his son break out of their confinement by Chris Evans becoming a little bit of a nicer person. Again, big action. They try to stop the sleigh from taking off. They succeed at stopping the sleigh from taking off. Grilla returns to her true form, which is an 18-foot tall, two-tailed ogre. And Krampus shows up to help out his brother in a nice little moment. And then J.K. Simmons summons back all the reindeer to drop her into the pile of cursed snow globes. She's captured in one of those and flown off. And then Chris Evans and his kid get to go on the Christmas run with Santa Claus. And as they're on the way back from that, The Rock looks over at the two of them and he can see the inner child of Chris Evans, and Santa looks back at him and goes, "Oh, good, you can see it again. Yeah, that's why we do it." And he goes, "I'd like to stay on if you'll have me." And the studio executive goes, No sequels for you. Your franchise attempt has failed. Do not pass go. Do not collect the $250 million that we burned on this project. And that's where we end.
I absolutely love this movie. It's not perfect, but I had an ear-to-ear smile for almost the entire thing. One of the things that I liked about it was, much like with Transformers 1, the marketing did not do this movie any justice. They were selling it as a goofy comedy. It's not. It's actually not that funny.
No, I talked with one of my brothers about this. He asked me about it. So, was it funny? I went, in a few places, but it's incidental to trying to. The humor is incidental to this trying to be a family movie. It's not intended to be comedic.
Right. The Rock has a couple of really funny lines, and the first time you see him do the Ant-Man routine, it's ridiculous because it just looks ridiculous. It's The Rock, and then
it not only looks ridiculous, it looks bad.
Yeah, it looks really bad.
I'll get to that later, but
it's not quite as seamless as the stuff Paul Rudd does with Ant-Man, but that's a whole other conversation. But when Chris Evans is asking The Rock what's the mission, and he was like, "To spread joy, asshole." Like, I laughed hard at that. just like there was so much in that line, and The Rock delivered it really funny. But like I said, the movie is not slapsticky at all. Like they don't
Very,
even really
very
do a lot of.
rarely.
They don't even really do a lot of funny stuff with the action sequences. It's all played pretty straight. That's one of the things that I really liked about this movie was everybody in it is deadly. And I absolutely know the critically acclaimed guys are going to say the exact opposite of what I'm about to say. Like William Bibiani is going to be like, why didn't they lean into the silly more? And I think that's a strength that they don't lean into the silly. Everyone plays this deadly fucking serious. Lucy Liu acts like the mythological organization she's running is the fucking CIA. It's great. The Rock has like religious zealotry and the seriousness of a fucking Marine, which works for his character. J.K. Simmons' Santa Claus might be the best Santa Claus I've seen on film in a long time.
Let me make the following point.
Mm-hmm.
Of this entire cast, there is only one bit of casting for this movie that I think is actually relevant. And it's J.K. Simmons. You could recast the entire rest of this movie.
Sure.
And you would probably still be about as good. Like, you could get someone else.
Jason Statham could have done The Rock's job. You could have gotten Chris Pine or Chris Pratt to do Chris Evans' job.
Either of those. Get any of the Chris's, apart from maybe Hemsworth, because Hemsworth could do The Rock's job. Like,
literally anyone could have been Lucy Liu. They could have gotten any halfway serious broad to be Lucy Liu. But
you could have got Sydney Sweeney. Well, and I don't mean that pejoratively. I mean anybody. The only role in this movie that actually I think is critical to the success of this film in ways that are difficult to fully quantify is the role of Santa Claus. And J.K. Simmons is the man. This was
You know what he reminded me? He reminded me of How Much Linkletter from the I believe that's his name, from Midnight Mass. But in that I don't have to play this silly. Jolly doesn't necessarily denote silly.
Yeah.
I can be jolly in the spirit of good without being a clown, without being asinine. Like, he is, when you go to your religious leaders, I know religious leaders have caught a bad rap for the last 20 odd years or so. The Catholic, the scandal with the kids and everything didn't fucking do anyone any favors, obviously. So, religious leaders take a bad rap, especially for those of people who have had really bad experiences with religious institutions in their life. And I'm not taking that away from them. I'm not saying they're all perfect. Far from it. However, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And let's not, like we do with cops, paint with the whitest brush possible that they're all bad. There were some truly great, and this is what I'm trying to get to, inspiring religious leadership. And when that religious leadership is empathetic and inspiring and kind and gentle, it does an enormous amount of good for those that touch it, for those that are involved with it. That's the energy J.K. Simmons brought to that character. And might I also add, all of the masculinity he brought. There is, without, again, we tend to, because of the world we live in now, tend to associate masculinity with toxic masculinity. And if you're looking for what's the difference is the J.K. Simmons Santa Claus character in this movie.
Yeah, he is very driven by his goals. Mm-hmm. He is very committed to a lot of masculine pursuits, and none of that is harsh or demeaning or has any kind of negative, deleterious effect to anyone around him. He is uplifting, and that's what that's supposed to look like.
The Rock is leaving his position because he can't live up to the expectation anymore. And Santa's whole thing is it's still there, it's still see you, but I can't force you. I can't force you to see what's still there that you're not acknowledging anymore. You'll come to it on your own.
Yeah.
And he does, and then he's just like, good, see, told you. Glad you're still with us. And that's it. That's all that was needed. It's great. J.K. Simmons is phenomenal in this, and he won't get anywhere near the credit that he deserves. Because he deserves a Best Supporting Actor,
He
nomination.
really does. I was about to say that. Like, he's not going to get any kind of respect from the awards community for this role because of the movie. But anyone who takes the craft of acting seriously and the acknowledgement of that seriously, dude, this is one of the best supporting acting jobs you'll find all year from this one guy in this one silly movie. But the fact that it's a silly movie doesn't matter. His acting should, and he does
also, I
wonderful
guarantee you
job.
that if we picked up the traditional conservative religious motifs, there's going to be a concerted effort to tell people to stay away from this movie. It's trash.
Probably.
The Rock is shit. This is garbage. Don't watch it. You know, almost guarantee. Like, I almost guarantee you there's at least a part. I mean, I think part of the harsh criticism is, don't challenge my worldview. I can't take it. And the other half is, well, we really don't want people to see this. We're trying to. Like, how did this not come out of one of the weirdo conservative studios? This came from MGM. For God's sakes, how did this happen? Who let this happen? So anyway,
Probably.
The Rock, I think, is fine. The Rock is The Rock. You know, he's always, you know,
he just is who he is. He's
got
a. I don't mean to say that he has no range, because I think that would be a little bit unfair to the man.
No, because
but
his voice
it's
worked
narrow.
from Maui. His voice work from Maui in Moana shows that he has range and he can do a lot of fun stuff. But he's kind of become like, you know, I want to say John Cena, but
hang on, no. I heard The Rock
keep taking the same roles over and over again.
I heard The Rock described this way once. When he started like really churning out movies and they started being a bit more successful. He's not an actor, he's a brand.
Yeah.
And the roles he takes, there can be variance there. Some will be goofier because he's actually a pretty decent comedic actor. Not the best, but he's okay. He can do the action stuff.
This inspired my kids to start talking about the Tooth Fairy. Apparently, Melissa and Chris, because, you know, hockey, they showed Jonas and Lily the Tooth Fairy, and Joe's like, "This movie sucks. Why did you do this to me?" But Red
good.
One inspired a conversation about their viewing of the Tooth Fairy, which has The Rock in it.
If you want to show him another movie with The Rock that I think is, I heard it described this way, but he's in a movie that's called The Rundown, which I actually adore.
Dude, of course I've seen The Rundown. The Rundown's awesome.
I heard someone say once that if The Rundown had been released in 1991, we would hold it up as a classic like Die Hard.
Yeah. If The Rundown was in 1985, it would be revered.
Oh yeah. It would be, because that's the spirit that movie channels.
Yeah.
So, but
let me talk about
the point.
Finish, but then I'm going to talk about Chris Evans.
Okay. But the point about The Rock is, like, there is some range there, but he's not going to do what Batista or Cena do in terms of, like, Batista is a very good actor, believe it or not.
Yeah, well, he takes a variety of parts that require acting.
And don't get me wrong, not everything he does is great. I'm not going to stump for everything Batista's done. But he makes a concerted effort to look for roles and the things that challenge him and push him.
Yeah.
And that means sometimes he's a whiny bully. And The Rock is just not going to take that role because the brand that he is something that he holds more important than what he does as an actor. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying that's the lens through which he kind of approaches this.
So Chris Evans, I really loved in Knives Out. And he kind of takes that bag of shit character in Knives Out and turns it up. Like, he is just garbage in this movie. But him and The Rock both have really great, solid character arcs. And his arc of, by the end of it, and this is another element. I said this to you off air in a bit of chiding from a few weeks ago. We don't need to get into it. But I said to you at the time, and I'm making this public now, I take being a father very seriously. You don't have to like my choices as a father. You don't have to like the way that I raise my kids, but it's the way I've chosen to do it, and I stand by it 100%. And my children's behavior and hopefully their success in life is all the proof I need I'm doing the right thing. And that's all I'm going to say about that. However, if I ever do anything else in my life, I will always have been and will be a father, and that's all I ever need to be. I wish being the best father I could be had financial rewards to where I'm not staring into the fucking abyss every day, wondering how I'm going to make rent this month. But I should have made better financial choices. Say la vie. But I don't think there's anything better in life than being a dad. My personal opinion. I don't expect everyone to agree with it, but it's my own personal philosophy. I love the shit out of my kids. And I try very, very hard every day to be the best dad that I can be. And I don't always succeed. And I have definitely made mistakes. And I'm paying for those mistakes as we speak. But I try each day to do a little bit better. And one of the themes of this movie, one of the ideas behind it is Chris Evans' internal struggle with being a dad and feeling I'm not worthy of. I'm not nearly the bag of shit that Chris Evans is, and I have felt that way, that I am not worthy. My kids, there have definitely been times, especially over the last 2 years, that I thought my kids would be better off without me, and I had to be kind of slapped back into reality of they would be so much worse without you. What the fuck is wrong with you? Welcome to my daily struggle. But him going, I stayed away because you have a great mom, you have a great stepdad. What the fuck do you need me for? I'm terrible. I can only bring you pain. And his son going, you're still my dad. I still want you there. And by the end of the movie, he comes to see the value of being the best father he can be, warts and all. That's great. That got me in the feels, and it honestly produced tears. I was, crying happy tears for Chris Evans' character learning the value of fatherhood and the bonding between child and father.
He says something that I actually appreciated that they gave a line they gave the character. Because when he's talking between the snow globes to his kid, and he says, look, my behavior has been bad for you, like me trying to stay away, it's been bad for you and it's been worse for me. The acknowledgement that the voluntary acceptance of the responsibility makes you a better person. And it's not always easy, but that gets lost a lot in the discourse around stuff like this. Because his line about, you're in a better place. Your mom's pretty awesome. She's a doctor. She married a very good man. Thankfully, this wasn't I imagine Roland Emmerich would have rewritten that entirely, because we've talked about we've talked about his antipathy for blended families before. And there's a lot of contemporary thought out there that would put Chris Evans' character in the right for what he did.
Right.
And this movie is well written enough and has a good enough grasp on the actual emotions and the actual philosophy that, no, maybe you do kind of suck, but being willing to voluntarily accept responsibility and hardship is ennobling, and it will make you better. And
I think also the power of redemption, another religious theme, is throughout this movie. Chris Evans sort of on bended knee going, I want to be better. I want to redeem myself. I think is empowering. Also, I can see why that would drive people who saw this of a certain kind right up the wall.
Of course it would, because the entire notion of redemption is almost absent from functionally the postmodernist philosophy.
There's a lot of comedians that kind of make fun of the whole Catholic confession thing. And I was talking to my kids about this, and I think I may have mentioned it on even a podcast, where the concept of confession is you're supposed to, confess the things that you have done, confess your sins so that you may be absolved of the guilt that you're carrying around, and you have that energy to be better, to do better, to try harder, to make amends in your life, to not repeat the same shit mistakes over and over and over again. It's not a fucking car wash. You don't walk in there. I poked a badger with a stick. Well, that's 10 Hail Marys and 7 Hallelujahs. Get the fuck out. And then you walk out and you commit more sins. No. It's the idea is I've done a bad thing. I feel horrible about it. I can't get out of my own fucking way right now. I'm struggling. Absolve me of my guilt so that I can get out of my own way and try to be better. This is shit and I don't like how I feel. And the priest goes, you were absolved. Do a penance. Don't be an asshole. Okay. And off you go. And it's like, that whole second part is the part that seems to be lost in everybody. They're very much focused on, I would like to get away with murder now. Can I get away with murder? Will you please absolve me of the bad things I do so that I can get away with the bullshit? So that I can, and I'm very much stuck on this lately. I said this to somebody recently. I was like, you are very much the pig who makes the house of straw. And you are just fiddling away. And then when the big bad wolf comes, you cry and look for the nearest pig you can find with a brick house. And after you've done this 2 or 3 more times, you start running out of pigs willing to take you in. And the fact that we, as a society, seemingly, at least in America, value the straw pig culture versus the brick pig culture frustrates me to no end. But then we're back to The Simpsons and, Homer and what's his nuts, who worked hard to work at the plant and eventually blows himself up, but everything comes so easy to Homer.
One of these days, you and I are going to have the discussion about Frank Grimes and whether or not he's actually a villain.
Yeah.
But we're not going to do that now because that might be
Today is not that day.
Today is not that day.
But so all of this to go back into Red One, the stuff with Chris Evans and the value of fatherhood and the value in redemption and wanting to be better, that's all in the movie. That's all in the subtext. Yeah. It's great, and it's great.
In some
cases, it brought tears to my eyes,
text.
And it made me love the movie. Yes, and in some cases, right out there. And it made me love the movie that much more. The last thing I want to talk about, so we can move this on since we're almost at an hour. The Christmas mythology is totes adorbs. I just loved it. I enjoy.
Why would you say that?
I enjoy Kiernan Shipka. I think she's just a fine little blondie actress. I enjoyed her and I enjoyed the reviews I did with, my dear sweet friend Alexis Hana, where we looked at the chilling adventures of Sabrina. They don't have her do a whole hell of a lot, but she's supposed to look, evil and wicked, and they don't necessarily make her look sexy, thank God. But they gave her sufficient enough modern, pretty menace that I think she looks nice on screen, being the bad guy.
For the record, another role that could have gone to pretty much anyone.
Yeah, but there's at least 10 short blondes they could have given that to if they wanted the same look.
And if they're willing to wear a wig, you could have expanded that list even more.
Yeah, any one of the Descendants characters, the whole 9 yards. Anyway, my point is, Kiernan Shipka did a perfectly serviceable job. She looked nice in the costume. I thought she gave, as good a performance as needed of her. And her plan made sense. Good God, I've been her. Where her just like, my God, everybody sucks, and I've kind of had it, and I'm tired of being the bigger person, and I just want to punish people for being bad. And her way of punishing them was not to kill them. Again, a very kind of like religious idea of, well, I don't want to kill you because what are you going to learn being dead? However, being trapped with your own, I was talking to you about this earlier, being trapped with your own thoughts forever. My God, I couldn't do 12 hours without, having to call my mom. Could you imagine being trapped in a snow globe for eternity with your own stupid thoughts? I can't think of a worse punishment. And so I think like her idea, like the plot of this thing is about the least important, but it was all solid. It all tracked for me. I thought she did a really good job. I enjoyed the stuff with Krampus. It's silly, but again, we're having fun with Christmas mythology. I love the use of the Christmas mythology terminology. You know, when Lucy Lou starts talking about Santa, she doesn't call him Santa Claus. She calls him Saint Nicholas of Armida or whatever the fuck she says. Stuff like that.
True story. The real Saint Nicholas was part of was it the Council of, I forget which council it was. He's responsible for one of the creeds that kind of gets umbrellaed into the Nicene creeds, and he was so adamant about the triune nature of God, and as a non-creedist and non-Trinitarian, this lowers him in my estimation. He actually choked a guy during the Nicene conference.
That tracks for me. Anyway, I love the use of Christmas mythology, and overall, this made my top 10 of the year. I think it.
Once again,
I don't have many quibbles. One, I super enjoyed this movie. Two, I don't think it was poorly made. Other than some of the wonky CGI, which looks kind of shit. That's about the only. It looks cheap. It looks like it was made to go on Amazon. It was so funny. I think they made the decision to do IMAX well after they had done the CGI rendering, and they're like, "There's nothing we can do. It's going to look like garbage." And The Rock said, "It'll be fine."
I did not watch this in IMAX, and I imagine it would have hurt my brain.
I did, and it's about the only bad thing I have to say about this movie is the CGI is shit. But I don't care. I'm not the world's biggest. It has to be much worse than this for me to go, it took me out of the movie. I just was like, okay, I know it's CGI. This looks like shit. But I don't care. The rest of it is so much better. It's so good that I got over it fast enough. So those are my thoughts. Like I said, top 10 for the year. Well enough made that I can put it above other movies like Furiosa, and enjoyed it so much that I can't not put it in my top 10. Not that I'm smiling to the point where my face hurt, but also crying because the message about fatherhood touched me as it did.
That's fair. And as the guy who is very sensitive to bad CGI, let me list some of my complaints. So let's just start with that, man. The CGI in this, it's just not very good. The entire chase sequence with the snowplow, through the North Pole, it's badly rendered, and it's all done in the dark, so you can barely follow what's happening anyway.
Yeah, I missed the detail that they were still at the North Pole, by the way.
I understand. Everything that takes place in Aruba looks very bad. I mean,
those snowmen look terrible.
They did, but I'm actually more forgiving of that because what are you going to do with that? There's nothing else you can do with that. Some of this one killed me. Anytime the polar bear is physically interacting with Chris Evans, I don't mean supposed to be sharing the screen. I mean when he bear hugs him.
Right.
They don't line up. It doesn't look real. It looks so bad. There's a bunch of the green screen compositing that is just, for $250 million, it should not look this bad. That's really my big gripe with it.
They didn't spend it on the CGI, I tell you that much.
So that's a problem. So personally, if I had my biggest personal gripe, the way it looks is a giant hurdle for me that I'm not sure I can get over. As a story, thematically, I really appreciated this story. In detail, this does not hold up to scrutiny. This is a plot where most of the middle is busy work, and I really find that to be not good. That is poor film craft.
It does, because of all the world building and character stuff. It takes forever to get to we have to find Santa.
There's that.
And then it's two stops, and we find Santa.
Yeah. There's when we hit about the halfway point of this movie, I went, "Oh, they want to franchise this." It became very apparent that And man, you and I have griped about this for a long time now. If part of your philosophy around writing and making your movie is, we'll fix it in the sequel, stop.
Yeah.
Just stop. That's bad. That's bad film craft. And there's a lot of that goes on in this movie. And I couldn't unsee it. And again, like the pointless busy work for our characters. Sure, we'll go to Aruba, and we go to here, then we go to here. Then we have the scene where they talk in the car. Then there's the scene where the intercutting of the nothing going on with the villain. There's just, I like the heart of this story.
There's literally a scene where I can't get my magic photocopier to work. And
Yes.
That's kind of it. And then it's, okay, my magic photocopier works now. And then we're into the conclusion.
Yeah. I like the heart of this story very much.
Mm-hmm.
But man, this needed like 2 or 3 more passes and a lot of trimming because this thing clocks in at over 2 hours.
I didn't feel it though. I was with the story.
And I imagine if you are with the story, it doesn't feel quite as long. I struggled with this in places, so there's big chunks where I went.
We said that about a few other movies. We said that about a few movies this year, where if you're into the story, it doesn't feel its length. If you are not into the story, this thing feels interminable.
Yeah, this didn't quite feel interminable, but by the time they went, oh, they never left the North Pole, I went, we're still here. And can I be honest about something real fast about it? I am willing to go with movies like this on a lot of hurdles. Like, we took over the North Pole complex was a bridge too far for me in this one, man.
Okay.
Here's why. This is an entire city. There's an industrial complex here. This is not 10 elves in the workshop, right? This is a big operation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just not enough of this to make going on in this movie for me to overlook the theory that 1 witch and 8 ogres, all shapeshifters, somehow took over the entire North Pole complex that we were presented in the beginning of this movie.
I'm not taking away your right to be like, this is too much for me. You're entitled to that. I think I firmly sat in the place of a wizard did it and let it go.
I'll go, and this is, again, a thing just for me, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I was with their version of how Santa delivers presents, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how far I'm willing to go with this movie. Because we're living in a world that is steeped in the mythological, has magic, has all this other stuff. So I'll go a long way with you. Right? My suspension of disbelief is very resilient for this kind of a film in general. They took over a city with 9 people.
I mean, so did
I'm
Bane.
sorry, no. That's
Bane took over Gotham once they got rid of the cops in the sewer.
No. Bane incited a rebellion absent the authority figures that keep law and order. And boy, has history not borne that one out. Eh? Okay? Bane didn't come in with 8 people, with 8 goons, imprison the entire police force, drag Bruce Wayne under Wayne Manor, and then use his magic to power their building a nuclear weapon.
Okay. I withdrawn.
And what kills me about it is there's an easy fix to this. There's an easy fix to this. They don't take over the North Pole. They just got to the basement and sealed it up. And no one knows they're there. But the North Pole is still operating normally. The fact that we go back and it's a ghost town, like, there's execution here that just should have been this is a pothole that you just drove into for no good reason.
Okay, we got it.
I think if I have another reason that I struggled to really go with this movie the way that a lot of other people did, it's I apologize if anyone feels differently than me about this one. The Rock and Chris Evans both do fine acting jobs. Something about the chemistry between them didn't quite click for me for the way I feel like these two characters needed to.
I agree with you. I don't feel like there was any spark between them.
Yeah.
It feels very plain. Like
It-
it almost feel they are interacting with each other, but some of their scenes come across like one of them wasn't there, and they had to like paste in they were acting opposite of broomstick, and they had to paste those scenes together, or like when they do the movies where you're talking to yourself.
Yeah. There's a lot of that, and that created a big disconnect for me because these are two characters these are the guys we're following. These are the guys with the emotional journeys. These are the guys with the arcs.
As opposed to Chris Evans and his son, or The Rock and J.K. Simmons, who both sets have chemistry together.
Yeah, those two individual groups work fine, and you can do okay, we don't necessarily work well together, but we have to team up chemistry, and even that's a little bit absent here. And I think some of that's down to the acting, and I think some of that's down to the writing, and it was another thing that I couldn't buy into for the full journey of this movie. This movie, if you want another way to think about it, this movie really struggles when J.K. Simmons isn't on screen. And
well, I would
he's
tell
not
you,
on screen.
When Chris Evans is by himself, he's fine.
He's okay, yeah.
Chris Evans interacting with every other cast member is fine. The problem is he spends the majority of it with The Rock, and him and The Rock don't click.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness to The Rock, I'll do the same thing with him. Like, his stuff with J.K. Simmons is really good. His stuff with Lucy Liu is actually representative of the appropriate relationship those two characters are supposed to have. Like,
yeah, he's fine with Lucy Liu.
It's literally just these two that are... Oil and Water's a bit harsh, but that's the vibe. Like, it just doesn't quite click.
I think a better metaphor, it's two pieces of white bread.
Yeah. Yeah.
You put something else on the white bread, it's fine. It's, they accent each other nicely. It's why we love sandwiches.
True.
However, two pieces of white bread, it's a lot of white bread. Nothing in between.
More than a little bit, yeah. And so I think that's the other thing that kind of kept me from really being able to sink into this film. But as I mentioned, like, there's a lot. I said this to you off air, and I'm going to repeat it here. Walking out of this movie, everything about what has followed made sense to me. I understood why you liked it, and I understood why audience members would like it. I understood why critics hated it, and I completely understood why it's bombing. Like, everything about this tracks.
All right. Well, to talk about more of why it's bombing, here comes
we go.
The money.
We're in the money. We're in the money.
All right. On a retarded, overpriced, overblown, irresponsible $250 million budget, this thing, good God.
Okay, hang on. Two things before you get to what it's done. Two things about this budget that need to be addressed. Okay, one, most budgets in Hollywood are underreported by about $10 to $12 million. Kind of a general rule, especially when you get this big a budget. Like, if you're making a movie for $10 million, you're not going to underreport doubling the budget. But when you get north of $100 million, something around a 10% overage is kind of understood. It's kind of par for the course. So there's that. So 250 if they're lucky. That also does not include marketing. And you and I talked about this a little bit, man. There was a non-trivial marketing push for this thing. Yeah, the advertising on this was not cheap.
This thing's probably more of a $500 million movie. And at the time of this recording has made $84.1 million. It hurts me to have done that.
I know, Mark. I can see the pain in your eyes, and I'm only half joking about that. This is my other thing about this movie. If you had done this correctly, and I mean, like, once you greenlit this, if you had done it correctly from a production standpoint, it's got a budget of $125-160 million, and it probably winds up being profitable.
All right. In the U.S. and Canada, Red One was projected to gross 30 to 35 million from just about 4,000 theaters, with some independent sources predicting a debut as low as 25 or as high as 40 million. The film made 10.9 on its first day, including 3 previews. It went on to debut 34 million, topping the box office. Speaking on its opening, boy, puberty really hurts. Variety concluded that it'll take a Christmas miracle for Red One to become a profitable hit at the box office, but noted that streamers like Amazon, Apple, and Netflix don't necessarily, and here's the rub, don't necessarily need their films to be successful in theaters to be considered a success, citing 2023's Killers of the Flower Moon, which was nominated for a Best Picture.
Okay.
Which debuted at $23 million against a $200 million budget, but later became a hit on Apple TV+.
Let me talk about this real fast, because comparing this to Killers of the Flower Moon is disingenuous in a lot of ways.
Uh-huh. Variety disingenuous? The hell, you say?
Who'd have thought that rag, right? Because after I came out of this movie, I put in our group chat, I said, Mark, I completely understand why you enjoyed this. No shade. I completely understand why it's bombing.
Yeah.
And one of the guys in our group chat said, the audience score is the only score that matters on Rotten Tomatoes. And I now must address this, because no. There are 2 primary pillars upon which your film is going to stand. And there can be overlap for these. Ideally, there is, but it's not strictly speaking necessary. But there's 2. There's not even 3. There's 2. One is the artistic integrity of your project. Some art you just make because it's art. The other pillar is money. Some projects you make just to turn a profit. Now, again, ideally, it's the same thing in a perfect world, right? It's very rare that happens these days. In fact, in the last 10 years, it's happened surpassingly infrequently. But those are the 2 things. So here's my critique of the audience score is the one that matters. The audience score only matters in as much as it is reflective of the money you make. If that's what we're talking about, the fact that, I made 20 people happy is really not that important a deal. And if you don't have a piece of profound artistic integrity, and much as you and I, there's a lot about this movie we liked, this is not a piece of profound of profound art. It's a nice little movie. I don't say that to be diminished, to dismiss it, but we're categorizing here. So the argument but the audience score is high, okay, the follow-up question that you then must ask is, how much money did it make?
Right.
If you have a high audience score and no money, you achieved nothing. And that is just the harsh reality of it. And I don't like the fact that that's reality, but that is reality.
Let me interject something that we've talked about many, many times over the past 2 years. And that is my divorce. No, I'm just kidding. That is that is what they were trying to get at, but kind of missed the mark, which is Amazon, Apple, and Netflix are not in the business of making major motion pictures for theatrical exhibition.
Yeah.
Netflix is a movie distributor, and it was a rental outlet at that. It's now just become a streamer. The primary streamer on Earth, and is now getting into the live event marketplace. See the debacle that was Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, and I mean that in every way possible.
Mike Tyson showed his ass on that broadcast, literally.
Literally. But Apple sells computers, and Amazon sells
sort of.
And Amazon sells everything. Their primary line of business is not movies. Movies is essentially a marketing wing of their brand. Apple puts out Argyle, they get to show their name in theaters. They go, look, Apple Films. Look, we're in films now. Aren't we spectacular? Don't we look like ourselves?
Hey, we did Napoleon. Remember that? Ridley Scott still has the touch, right? Right? Desperately hoping that Gladiator 2 is a thing.
No one goes to see it because who gives a fuck? But what they're hoping is people will buy Apple products, people will have Apple Plus, people will then see the movies. And I think in turn, both Argyle, Amazon, Napoleon, and Killers of the Flower Moon all did do well on Apple Plus.
Argyle did not. Let's be real about that one.
I thought it did, but I haven't looked at the numbers recently. A lot of the second market for these movies is where they do well. Netflix is huge with this, where they'll have a limited release of a movie in theater so they can be eligible for awards, but then they go on the Netflix and that's where everyone sees it at, and it does retarded numbers. This is also the same for Amazon, where they'll give something a limited release and then you'll see it on Amazon and that's where everyone sees it. This is what happened. We actually did a Damn You Hollywood that tackled both of these. One was an Amazon and one was a Netflix. It was Don't Look Up and Being the Ricardos, I believe is the name of it. So my point is that Amazon has money to burn. And while we can sit here and go, this isn't Lionsgate, where they make a $250 movie and it does this poorly. Lionsgate's on the chopping block and on the verge of going out of business. Amazon's like, que sera. Didn't work out. Moving on to the next thing.
It borders on a rounding error. Now, even for Amazon, a $250 million is a lot of money.
They made $250 million while I said that sentence.
No, they're not. Hang on, that's a bit ridiculous. But
my point is, they make a lot of money.
They do.
They can afford a bomb or two. So
this is not going to hurt them in any sort of substantive way. But and even at Amazon, you look at this and kind of go, we can't do this a lot.
No, they cannot continue to do Marvel movies that make Howard the Duck money. But I will say this. This is a very Teflon movie because it's not going to hurt The Rock. The Rock is a fucking board seat now in the WWE and is part of
Hang on, no. He has a board seat on TKO, which is the parent company.
Yeah, so he's got that going, not to mention his own production company and a billion other lines of businesses in the works. Chris Evans is a working actor. Everyone likes him and he's good at what he does. He's not hurting for work either. This isn't going to touch him. Lucy Liu is well past her prime, but if she's getting this, she'll get work. She's not, unless she spent all of her money on crack. Lucy Liu will be just fine.
She's probably J.K. Simmons is an Oscar winner who is just one of the guys who is always he'll do just about anything, and I don't mean that as a negative. Like, he's open to doing a lot of different things.
This is the most ineffective bomb in the history of movies, where it won't affect the studio or anybody involved.
Well, the VFX team will probably get fired, and the director will. This will hurt the director more than anyone else, believe it or not. Everybody else,
I think they're bringing him back for another Jumanji movie. He'll be fine.
And if that one does well, then he'll have rebounded. But he's the only one somewhat at risk here. Is
right.
Oh yeah, people are going to see that I directed that.
Yeah, I don't know. I tend to think that because nothing else will be affected by this movie, he kind of skates by, unscathed.
He's going to skate because no one's going to think that there was a director for this. There's a director because of union rules, not because there's actually a director.
Red One, directed by artificial intelligence. All right.
I wasn't joking when I said you could get the Ratnertron 3000 out there to have done this.
Red One was the #1 movie of the weekend. It knocked Venom in its 4th week from 1 to 2. I'd like to go ahead and make a point of saying that Venom was the #1 movie until Red One.
In fairness, nothing else of substance came out.
The best Christmas pageant ever, which I believe is a remake, you said, from Lionsgate.
It's based on It's based on a story, and okay. I know there was at least one live-action version of some kind that I watched when I was in elementary school when they showed it. So it's certainly another adaptation of that story. I don't know.
Right. It maintained its spot at number 3. Heretic fell from 2 to 4. The Wild Robot 4 to 5. Smile 5 to 6. Conclave, which was reviewed by the good boys over at Movies That Don't Suck, from 6 to 7. Hello,
love. So you guys reviewed that and Heretic? For
They did.
religious reasons?
They did. I didn't. I wasn't on that one.
Ah,
I will be there Thursday though, which means I got to watch Saturday night between now and then. But I believe we're
boo.
talking. I get to talk Red One again and convince Chris how lovely this movie is. But we're also going to talk Saturday night at my insistence. Hello, love, again. That was number 8. A Real Pain opened in a bunch of theaters from Searchlight, and that jumped from 18 to 9. Honora, which is getting Best Picture buzz from Neon, fell from 7 to 10, and apparently is amazing. We Live in Time dropped from 9 to 11. I saw Here, which is based on a graphic novel. It's an interesting movie. It's not getting good reviews. The guys over at Critically Acclaimed reviewed it, and their whole thing was because the movie exists in this one shot, and it's this shot over centuries, a lot of stuff is forced. Like one of the criticisms of William Bibiani is like, come on, they have a full dining room. Why are they eating in the living room? Why? Because that's the movie. That's the shot. That's the frame. So everything has to happen in this one room. And it's like, that's not how life works. So it kind of took him out of the movie that they have to force a lot of stuff to happen in this one house, in this one room of this one house. I saw it on a date, and I don't know. We both walked out of it like, it's all right. You know, it's a Robert Zemeckis movie, and I'm starting to notice there's a style of direction I would like to call boomer direction, where like Zemeckis and Spielberg and Lucas and so many of these guys are just so fucking stuck. They did not age past 1990. And everything they have is 1950s and 60s sensibilities. Like, they are in love with post-World War II America and nothing else. And everything they do reflects that. And it's like, okay, is there an audience for this, though, besides my dad and me? Because that was the movie that was playing closest to when my date was happening. You haven't seen You got nothing. Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Nothing.
Sometimes you got something to say, sometimes you don't. So I was pausing to give you something to say. We're moving on.
That's fair.
Elevation went from 13 to 11 to 13. Small things like these, all the small things. Maintained its spot at 14. Beetlejuice dropped from 13 to 15. Ghost, Cat, and Zoo debuted at 16. Rounding out the top 20 were Overlord, The Substance, Hit Pig, which my kids laugh at every time we see the poster for that, and Transformers 1 at number 20. All We Imagine as Light from Sideshow debuted at number 24, and that was the weekend that was. Worldwide, baby!
Because it's been a minute since we've been here, because this month has been a wasteland.
It's been at least a month. So Inside Out remains the number 1 movie.
There's
in
no
the world.
movement at the top.
Deadpool and Wolverine at over $1 billion. The only 2 movies over $1 billion this year. It's about we said Deadpool and Wolverine, even though you fault me a little bit on that. But
I said if it got, by the time it kind of came out and I got to see it, I said if it crosses the billion, it'll kind of be barely across the billion. I think we all both said it's not catching Inside Out.
No, and yeah, they're both PVOD now or on streaming. So Despicable Me came short of $1 billion at 968. Dune Part 2.
$200 million more than $200 million to get to Dune Part 2.
Yep.
We've talked about this on the graph of the worldwide box office this year is thunk.
Yeah.
Thunk.
Well, it's $200 million between Godzilla and Dune, another $200 million between Dune and Despicable Me, $400 million between Despicable Me and Deadpool and Wolverine, and $300 million between Inside Out. So it's pretty large gaps. Yeah. After that's a little bit closer. It's closer than it had.
There's a few that are kind of close, and there's another big gap we can talk about. So we have
Godzilla times Kong at 571, Kung Fu Panda at 547.
Oh yeah, that came out this year.
Beetlejuice did not cross 500 million. Didn't even get close to the billion they were hoping for at 451. Venom: The Last Dance, God help us all, profitable at 436 million. Look, people, if you're going to keep going to see Sony movies, they're just going to keep making them, and that's no good for anybody.
I blame the Chinese once again, which does affect the profitability matrix, but
yeah, well, we're still getting Kraven the Hunter. Fuck me running.
That is going to be on my worst of the year, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Bad Boys Ride or Die at 404, and then rounding out the top 10 on just under 400 million is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Rounding out the top 20 are Twisters, Alien Romulus, It Ends With Us, The Wild Robot, A Quiet Place, Garfield, Joker. Joker, one of the bigger bombs this year at 206 million.
Hey, Joker doing better than Frozen Empire.
Yeah, again, Sony.
This is pathetic on both of their parts.
Sony. Listen to me, Sony. Sony. It's just Sonny Boy, Sony. Sony. Sell your movie division. Just make PlayStations and fucking stereos or some shit. Just stop. Give Spider-Man back to Marvel where he belongs, and just sell Ghostbusters to some other studio. You're not quite Lucasfilm, but you're not helping anything. Just stop already. Sony.
You have stolen my gimmick about that, and you know what? I'll allow it.
Well, I did it as Al Jolson, so that made it worse.
That's fair.
All right. We are in the crunch season at this point. This weekend is Gladiator. I should bring up the list. This weekend is Gladiator and Wicked. Oh my God. This fucking Wicked movie could not be plagued with more disasters.
I gotta be honest with you. You all have been swearing to me up and down that movie is going to be wildly successful. I've largely just kind of conceded the point. But the closer we get to it, and the more like potholes they run into, like these people are hitting every.
I mean, my God, the 2 stars went to the fucking Rachel Ziegler, school of fucking marketing your movie, which is,
they're not quite that unlikable, but you're right, they're close.
The one playing Elphaba, I mean, she fucking recanted finally. It was like, I probably should, like, this has been my favorite thing. I probably just should have called my friends. Yeah. No one needs to hear your stupid thoughts, dipshit. We're here to watch you perform a character. When no one cares about your fucking opinions, asshole. Good God.
You know what?
I didn't know who the fuck this lady was until that shit started. I would have been like the lady who plays Elphaba, and that would have been it. I didn't even realize that was Ariana Grande. That was playing Whatcha-Nuts.
Glinda.
Yeah, you know why I know any of this? Because I've been following the controversy on Midnight's Edge.
Okay.
And so, Andre is just buck naked holding his junk and having a field day with this.
I haven't checked out Midnight's Edge in a little bit, but I will have to hop over there and
he hasn't done like an 87 video series on much in a while. This thing fucking bit him right in the ass. He is on fire with it.
Okay. I'm going to reference something here, and I need y'all to just kind of stay with me because I'm not making a value statement. I am not making a statement of whether or not this is good or bad. Okay, no value. But if there's many things we all should learn from the election that just happened. Okay, whatever your political bent. Okay. If there's one thing I wish a certain kind of person would learn, it's that 2024 should have been, if nothing else, the final stake through the heart of the celebrity culture. It won't be. It should be. I bring this up just because the prevalence of social media has revealed to the vast majority of people what morons the actors are.
Sure.
And that used to be something that they kind of tried to hide.
Well, I was gonna say, like, it was kind of a novel. It was kind of a novel thing when South Park used to lampoon it on a regular basis, and then did it on the big screen with America World Police.
Yeah,
Matt Damon. But then it was just like, oh, Matt and Trey Parker, Matt Stone and Trey Parker are just mean guys. They're not that stupid. Matt Damon. And as it turns out,
I mean,
Matt Damon.
Okay, you do not do that very well, and I don't know that I want to do it right now. So just
Keep going.
no, now I have to. I go, Matt Damon, this is the movie.
Okay.
But I mean, I saw people. Okay, I'm not trying to laugh at the people who had like seriously bad reactions to the election of Donald Trump. Okay, so bear in mind what I'm about to say, like, I'm not mocking anyone specifically. I saw a number of people go, "How in the world did he win? All the celebrities were with Harris." That's a real reaction people had.
Boy, that's right up there with. I don't understand how Reagan won. Nobody I know voted for him.
Yeah,
We've learned nothing in 40 years.
nothing. Not a darn thing.
Nothing.
So, point there being, there are still, however, like publicists and celebrities, actors, operating under the assumption that their words carry weight. Let me give you all a little bit of advice, okay? Here's the only thing people want to hear from you, unless they specifically ask you about something else. Stories about the project you're in and what you're excited about it. Other than that, nobody cares. And I think it was Kurt Russell I heard actually express this appropriately, believe it or not. Somebody asked him, like, why don't you talk a lot about your life or your worldview or your politics? And he does on occasion, but in general, he doesn't. And somebody asked, like, why? Other people are out being activists or, very loud spokesmen for causes. And his response was just, I don't want to interfere with people being able to see me in any role. And I think that's a wise bit of advice that more people should consider taking. The audience, the people that pay you, basically want to be able to lose you and watch a role, watch a character. And a lot of you go way out of your way to get in the way of that. And that's not whether or not people agree with you or not, they stop seeing the character and they start seeing you, the actor. And that's not a good thing at all, as far as I can tell. So that's my 2 cents on that, as far as that goes. So yeah, if you're not happy with like the fans deciding that they want to mess with the posters for their own amusement, keep your opinion. Don't spew your opinion into the internet. Tell your dog, tell a friend. Like vent to someone appropriate. Don't piss off 70% of the people you're trying to get to shell out their hard-earned money to watch you do something on a green screen.
In the words of good friend of the show and sometimes co-host Sean Comer, don't fuck with the money, Gina.
The number of people who seem to think that what happened to Gina Carano only happens to actors who have a slightly more conservative social bent, y'all gonna learn some real hard lessons.
All right. Well, the point of all of that was this Friday we've got Gladiator 2 and a fist fight with Wicked. And then Lionsgate's got a movie out called Armor with Sylvester Stallone. And there's a smaller picture from Gravitas Ventures called The Fix, directed by Kelsey Egan. So that's this week. The following week, the 29th, well, we've got in the middle of Thanksgiving week, we've got Moana 2. And then the following
How is The Rock going to
Friday.
handle 2 movies grossly underperforming in the same year? Because everyone thinks Moana 2 is going to be $1 billion.
And then we've got another Best Picture possible nominee, September 5th, coming out on the 29th. I finally saw the trailer for Y2K. It looks terrible.
Yes, it does.
My kids are like, "What the fuck is this?"
Okay, as someone Mark, you and I both lived through Y2K.
Yeah.
A giant nothing burger, first of all, but also you know what I actually would find interesting is if they did one of those stupid like product thriller biopics about trying to fix the Y2K bug when people realize there might be a problem and having it go off without a hitch. Instead of a bad rehash of what was that stupid movie with all the celebrities and the apocalypse? This is the end, I think, something like that.
Are you sure you're not talking about Don't Look Up?
No, I'm not. No, there was this really stupid movie. This is not going to help you.
Then this is the end. All right. In any case, the point that I was trying to get to was Red One's going to get crushed under the weight of Gladiator 2 and Wicked. And I'm going to tell you, I think, even though we're waiting to do Wicked for a couple of weeks because I want to do Gladiator 2 first. Let me do this right. I want to do Gladiator 2 first, and then I want to do Moana 2. So we're not even going to get to Wicked until December 9th. By then, it'll have been out 2-3 weeks. Just fine. I honestly think, and we'll have a better sense of this by the time we do it, I honestly think it's going to be the number one movie of that weekend. I don't think there's a lot of excitement for Gladiator 2. I think there's a lot of why the fuck did you do this?
Here's the other problem that Gladiator 2 is running into. The embargoes are ending, and reviews are being published. And not doing well.
So you're talking about the Thanksgiving corridor week, 2-week period. You're talking about families. You're talking about families going to see maybe 1 or 2 movies. They're going to see Wicked and Moana. Some dudes will go see Gladiator, but again, my problem is you have to have that same kind of excitement that you had for Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and the dudes I talk to, what I'm saying is men don't go to the movies like they used to. Men stay in their homes because the world has become a scary and annoying place and they're afraid they'll kill everyone around them. I can empathize. So
you're going to booking for a whole other reason in the near future.
Yeah. So a lot of men have big, giant home theaters that they would rather watch their movies in the comfort of their own home. And they don't have to deal with the stupidity of the world. Top Gun was a happening. Men went to the theater to see Top Gun, and when they found out that it was for them, they told the other men, and the men brought their sons, and and every male on earth showed up for that movie, and it made over $1 billion. That's a trick you can't get away with a lot, and I don't know if Gladiator 2 is the movie to replicate that same trick.
I find it very unlikely that it is. Look, the only thing about that movie that's actually getting praise is Denzel Washington, because Denzel's the man.
Yeah,
that's kind of it.
So Wicked brings out all the women ever because every woman on earth has fucking read Wicked and loves it.
Here's my thing about Wicked.
Then most adults have seen the Broadway musical and loved it. And this is the kind of thing it's okay to bring kids to. And then you have Moana, which doesn't need an explanation. It's a fucking Disney movie.
Okay, here's my thing about Wicked. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I do agree it's going to be it's going to win that weekend, I think, probably pretty handily. Here's kind of the problem that I think Wicked is going to run into. I might be wrong, but this is just my guess. 2 things, more like 3. One is the bad publicity. You can't pretend that doesn't exist. I don't think it's I don't think it's going to sink it, but you can't pretend it hasn't happened. 2. The runtime on that thing is a problem. It's not, again, not a deal breaker.
Was it 3 hours?
Yeah, it's right around there, if memory serves.
And this is only part 1, so this whole fucking thing is going to be 6 hours. It's going to rival Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. Again, not a deal breaker, not going to sink it, but is the runtime of that thing going to be a problem? Yeah, anybody who does bring a kid to that, you making a kid sit there and watch 3 hours of Mean Girls in neon colors?
It's going to be rough. It's going to be a lot of bathroom breaks and a lot of popcorn and a lot of candy being shoved down kids' mouths so they'll quiet the fuck up.
Yes, and again, is this going to sink it? No, I don't think it's going to be sunk. I think it's going to be successful when it's all said and done.
I will tell you, one of the things because Andre went after this movie like a fucking tiger, he went about he pointed out that a lot of people who were fans of the musical are not. Before the idiot went crazy about the poster, the big problem was Ariana Grande, and it was because she was a homewrecker, allegedly.
You don't have to air quote allegedly there.
I don't know enough or care enough, and I'm not about to start speaking on someone's personal business. I really hate that we do this to celebrities. These are fucking people. No wonder they go crazy and do drugs. But however, whatever affair happened between these individuals, which is none of my business, was made public, and beyond that, people didn't like the casting of Ariana Grande to begin with. They don't.
That's
they,
true.
They apparently somebody. I mean, Kristen Chenoweth backed it, but Kristen Chenoweth probably backed it with a gun to her head. Like, tell her she's good, okay? I think there were other. I think much like Han Solo, there was like an entire like fan cry for this one particular actress to be Glinda, and then they were like Ariana Grande. The old Dick Cheney quail hunting, and everyone went, "What the fuck? This person was available. Why would you do this?" So
because bless Kristen Chenoweth, she looks as old as she is.
Well, no, they didn't want Kristen Chenoweth. I can't remember who Andre said it was. There was an outcry that it should have been X, and it was Y instead. My point is, people are a forgetful and forgiving lot. And I think that when it comes to, if they can manage to stop tripping over their own dick between now and Friday, I think a lot of this will be largely forgotten. It has to be good. That's the other thing. If the initial wave of people come away from this going, I fucking hated it, I wish everybody involved would be taken out back and shot, then yeah, we're gonna have it's gonna fall apart real fast. So, however, if people like, it's magical, it's everything I ever wanted a Wicked movie to be, I think we'll get past. I don't think the controversies have as much weight as angry conservative YouTubers think they do.
No. Again, when I said it's a bit of a hurdle, like it's not the biggest one, but there's a lot of people who pretend that bad press doesn't do anything, and I think that's a bit too much. I did not expect like the backlash from that actress being stupid in public to sink it, but you're putting up roadblocks you don't need to put up, and the two biggest ones.
Here's what I'll tell you: it'll cause more people to sit on their hands the first weekend than would have otherwise.
Yeah, that's true.
The fan excitement, I don't think, is as high as it could have been.
No, you know what? To your point there, now I've not seen any buzz for this. Like I know it's coming out because we do this, but like, have you know more people than I do who would be like buzzing over this hypothetically? Like, has there been a lot of fervor building
in the pervert circles I tend to frequent that are in love with witchy stuff and Wizard of Oz and crystals and all kinds of shit, all kinds of ill shit? No, I have not. I have not heard a lot of excitement for Wicked. And I think it's because they're like, these are not the witches I wanted casted.
So there's just, and then both part one and really long runtime, like I don't think the movie's going to bomb. Let me be very clear about this. Going to be successful. But part one with a 3-hour runtime, there's just hurdles that need to be addressed here, and I think it's foolish to pretend that there aren't.
It's a $145 million budget. Let's put it this way.
It's more appropriately budgeted than Red 1.
The last thing I'm going to say, and then we're going to move on. It has to hit a grand slam. It has to hit the ball right out of the park opening weekend, or it's dead. This has one at bat. It either Casey Jr.'s or we go home. And that's the last thing I'm going to say about Wicked. Because like I said, I think there's people kind of sitting on their hands going, we'll see if my friends like it. We'll see if my childless, middle-aged, liberal woman friend goes to see this thing and thinks it's the bee's knees, then I'll go see it. But if Maude comes back and says this is shit, I like the play much better, then fuck this movie, I ain't going.
And then there's Maude.
And then there's Maude. There's a character I just made up. All right. With that said,
Oh, come on. That there was the TV show, right? And then there's Maude.
and then there's Maude. Yes, I'm well aware. All right, Robert, are you ready?
I'm ready, sir.
It's the critical review.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Well, as we said before, it's got a 32% rotten rating on the tomato meter. Top critics, it's 23. All critics, it's 32. The verified audience is 90%. All audiences drops it to 84.
That's all about right.
And the AI writes, wrapped in slick packaging but wholly lacking in holiday magic, Red One is a ho-hum action adventure. Bad AI.
It's supposed to summarize what other people are saying, not be accurate in and of itself.
All right. Jeremy Johns of jeremyjohns.com. This movie is a superhero movie disguised as a Christmas movie.
Not wrong. Hang on. He's not talking about the story here.
See Christmas. I can see Russia from my house, though. It's like, duh.
Well, hang on, but it's all you can say that, but it's also the kind of thing that I do think is off-putting when this movie desperately wanted to be a Marvel movie, not only in terms of how much money they spent on it. Like, there's clearly things they were going for here.
Yeah.
Part of the vision, and I imagine this vision came from Dwayne Johnson, by the way, envisioned this as a much bigger story, and it really got a lot of stuff out of control.
Yeah.
And
Kevin Carr, fat guy at the movies. I get what they were thinking when they made this, which was to deliver a Fast and Furious heap version of Christmas. But they stripped out all the holiday cheer and replaced it with performative masculinity and enough testosterone to kill a bull elephant.
Okay. Kevin. Claiming that this is performative masculinity misses the point.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what it actually looks like.
This shouldn't be too much movie for Kevin.
It really should. This is one of those movies that in its simplicity is going to confuse everyone into thinking there's more. It's just kind of sad.
Sean Burns of North Shore Movies. Such a noisy, witless puddle of CGI puke. I can't believe Ryan Reynolds isn't in it.
I appreciate the Ryan Reynolds catching strays. I really do. Yeah, again, the CGI is a problem for this movie, and if you saw this in the format that made it look as ugly as it could be, I can absolutely understand why that's a hurdle for some. It's a hurdle for me too. So that was one of my complaints. I'm not gonna pretend otherwise.
Rendy Jones of Rendy Reviews, a lifeless, ugly Christmas movie shrouded on CG slop without an iota of joy.
Okay, that's no.
Again, nobody watched the same movie I saw.
Pretending that there's no joy in this is wildly inaccurate.
Yeah. Rachel Wagner of Hallmarky's podcast. You know, Robert, we have been toiling for years on
We've been doing this for a while
with our podcast, and yet we struggle. We every day we get a little bit bigger, we get a little bit more, we get a better audience, but still we don't quite have the audience that gets us to Rotten Tomatoes. And yet, because God is not fair, Rachel Wagner of Hallmarky's podcast gets to be on Rotten Tomatoes. You bitch.
The ad hominem is not necessary.
Makes the worst sin of all. It's boring, says Alexis Hana. I couldn't wait for it to be over.
Okay, hang on. As a guy who did struggle with the middle portion of this movie, you don't get to declare Whether or not something boring is, there's a degree to which it's subjective. And while I agree the middle portion meanders, say meanders because it's a better word than boring.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Did you go to school?
I mean, definitionally, yes. You mean like, do I have a degree from a university?
No, I mean, did you go to school? Elementary, middle, and high.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It wasn't just the school at Plain Edge High School that taught like interpretive analysis, right? Like we all got this. We all got fiction to read, and our English teachers taught us how to interpret the literature.
Okay. I did, but I also took like nothing but advanced English courses during my high school career.
Okay, so did I. I was in AP English. I
Both
believe
of them. I was in both of them.
Okay, smarty.
Hang on, they had AP Lit and AP Language, and I took both of those.
Okay, well,
Mass too, by the way. If I'm
we
gonna,
weren't that fancy at Plain Edge High School. We just had AP English. My point is, well, do they not get this in like the regular, ham and eggers English class?
I don't know how, if you were in remedial English, you would wind up reviewing movies for a living.
I just asked because I'm sitting here and like I don't know. I feel like I'm average, maybe slightly above average intelligence. I feel like I'm getting.
Have you
dumber
met
by
the
day.
average You've seen the average person, Mark. They wind up coming to your work.
That's fair. My point is, like, I saw this movie. We had an hour-long discussion of my interpretation of it and what I saw. I'm not, and again, also the acolyte. I'm not crazy. This stuff is there.
Yeah.
I can see it. How am I seeing through the code of the Matrix and nobody else is that we get this dumb as shit review?
Hang on. Jeff's got something here.
He does. Dwayne Johnson and Jeffrey Harris of 401mania.com. Dwayne Johnson and Jake Kasdan failed to make the most of a decently clever premise in Red One. The film was underwhelming, albeit inoffensive Yuletide family fare. Look, I generally don't pick at Jeff, but he's in a long line of people who how did you fucking miss everything about this movie? Unless you were here's the thing. Jeff's not like a raving crazy liberal either. He's from fucking Texas. How are you missing this stuff?
Well, again, I think the entire middle portion of this movie is kind of a struggle for a lot of people unless you're really invested in what happens in the first third. And that's a risk you take when you make a movie like this. Now,
hang on. Sarah Michelle Fetters finally gets it. The future ex-Mrs. Radulich. Sarah Michelle Fetters of MovieFreak.com, top critic. Well, I am as cynical about the current state of the human condition as anyone. You said it, sister. Red One taps into something honest and hopeful. Right now, with all that's going on in the real world, those aren't emotional states of being I want to take for granted. All right. Three cheers for Sarah Michelle Fetters.
You know what? Fair enough. We will not throw tomatoes at her.
All right. Let's see.
Can I tell you while you're looking for your next one? When I first saw the trailer for this movie, I went, they're going to make Santa Claus the villain. Like, that's where my headspace is around the state of movie making is Santa's going to have been the mastermind behind his own kidnapping because he's the one who's lost faith in humanity.
Yeah. Amy Nicholson.
If that's the story they told, a bunch of these idiots would have been given it rave reviews.
We've been opposite places right now. Amy Nicholson of whatever paper she's working for this week. Top critic. The looseness feels refreshing, a nod to the kind of giddy, sloppy 1980s flick this wants to be. A child pleaser that will live on forever in the back bedroom while the grown-ups do their boring adult chit-chat on the living room couch.
You know what? Much as I hate to agree with her, a blind squirrel does find a nut every now and then.
Lisa Lamont of Culturist. Eventually, Johnson and Evans has to put aside their snarky wit for a staggeringly miscalculated Christmas movie.
See, okay, here's the thing about that. I don't think this is miscalculated. I don't think it's great, but saying it's a miscalculation sort of implies this isn't the movie they wanted to make.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is the movie they wanted to make.
Zachary Lee of RogerEbert.com, top critic, which convinces me RogerEbert.com should be hacked. It's all gaudy rapping with no substance. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, no. look, it's not the deepest substance, and these people are struggling because, like you said, and you and I both mentioned, like there's no subterfuge to this movie. There's no subtlety. There's no subversion. It's straightforward. It's earnest, and they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Nick Shiger of the Daily Beast top critic in, what is it, the Tick Bird review? A Yuletide misfire that lands like a lump of coal. Der heap.
Now, tick birds are people very much glazing the studio. That is
Okay.
just bad writing.
Christian Toto of HollywoodInToto.com. Yuletide romp offers bromance, some laughs, and way too much plot. Oh, sir. I'm sorry. This movie was too much for you.
How did you get to too much plot out of this
Yeah.
movie? Again, meandering and unfocused, yes, that's not the same as too much.
Travis Hobson of Punch Drunk Critics. While the Yuletide sentiments are thin as store brand eggnog, cool visuals, clever twists on Christmas mythology, and a fully committed ensemble make for a gift worth unwrapping. When this toaster oven gets it, I weep for the art of criticism.
A little bit.
Brian Orndorff of Blu-ray.com. Red One is deadening to watch, as so much technical and thespian effort has gone into a feature that carries no sense of spirit. Again, I was the only one awake in English class, apparently.
Also, like saying that, oh, the poor visuals were wasted on this movie when the visuals are not good is, how did you invert that?
All right, we'll do one more of these, then we'll call it a night. Ian Sandwell of Digital Spy. You're left with an overwhelming confusion over who Red One is actually aimed at.
No, you're not. How can you be that? Okay. I really worked hard to avoid the insults and the ad hominems on our reviews here. How can you be that dense? That's got to be willful. Who is this for? You mean the movie with the giant talking polar bear? We're confused about the intended audience here? Come on. Be better.
All right. Well, folks, that wraps up our review of Red One. I hope you've enjoyed coming to church here with the Reverend great Robert Winfree and High Priest Mark Radulich. We bid you Yuletide and good tidings. Anyway, as I bubble and fuck my way through that, this Thursday we've got an on trial for Gladiator, which may have Pat Mullen, it may have Dorian Price, or it may have Robert Winfree. It may have my son. Who the fuck knows at this point?
Has your son seen Gladiator?
Yeah, I showed it to him like a month ago.
Okay. I imagine he was mostly positive on it.
He had the same criticism of Gladiator that he had of Ben-Hur, which was it takes way too long to get to the fighting.
Okay, he's too young to really get some of that stuff. So okay.
He was fully aware of that. He was like, I get it. What? I'm like 10, but I kind of wanted to see more. I kind of wanted to see more Gladiator and Gladiator.
Okay, the fact that he's cognizant of his own shortcomings makes him so much more appealing to be around than the average 10-year-old that I will just give you a big thumbs up.
Yeah, someday he won't go crazy if they cover his face in a fucking poster. Anywho.
65-35?
A week from tonight, we will be doing a Damn You Hollywood for Gladiator 2, and that'll be myself, Robert. Oh shit, I didn't put anyone in this. I thought somebody else was on Gladiator 2. Oh well, fuck them.
Or I didn't quite click. I usually go through to RSVP'd all that stuff appropriately, but
right. I don't know. I didn't write notes in Gladiator 2, so obviously you'll be there. But I thought like Jason or somebody volunteered for this. I don't know. I don't remember, and I don't care enough.
So hang on. If you're listening to this and you did volunteer to be on that show and you still want to be on it, let Mark know. If not, there's your get out of jail free card and hit the bricks.
There you go. I don't even remember. I guess maybe I only sent it to you then, because when I sent out the schedule, I don't know. Doesn't matter. I don't even care enough. All right, so that's what's going on there. Last week,
getting bound up over Gladiator 2 is not something we're gonna do here. We're good.
Last week, I was on Jesse's show. We reviewed City of Bane, and I made a song. We concluded our look at Ash vs. Evil Dead, and there was a Metal Hammer of Doom jukebox where we looked at the debut Slipknot album, and a fun time was had by all. Robert, What do you got going on this week? Oh, also, check out a alternative commentary Robert and I did for Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. That was kind of an impromptu thing, but we whipped one out. We had fun talking about it.
Much
We
like
had more
Mike
fun
Tyson.
We had more fun talking about it than we actually had watching the fight. So
It's a terrible
all right.
fight.
Yes, it
It was
was.
basically pro wrestling.
All right. Speaking of basically pro wrestling, I hear you cover that on Friday nights.
I cover what passes for professional wrestling from the WWE these days, at least. WWE SmackDown on Fridays. I kid. The last few episodes have actually been pretty good. If I have a major, I can talk to about this, Mark, because trying to express this to the people who read my stuff on a weekly basis is trying to do it in the written form. Like language gets lost, right? A little bit.
Okay.
So they're doing the reunion of the original Bloodline, and they're going to fight with Solo Sikoa's new Bloodline, and that's a whole thing, right? That's the angle they've been running.
Yeah, that'll be the big Survivor Series 5-on-5.
Well, at the moment it's 4-on-5. We're not sure who's going to be the fifth because so they were 4-on-4, and now the thing was like, okay, who's the fifth for each team? Well, Solo and company, the only star in that group, by the way, is Jacob Fatu. He is outshining Solo Sikoa at pretty much every turn, and it's kind of funny to watch. But that group recruited Bronson Reed on Friday, which just really increases the probability that it's going to be Seth. And I don't like Seth Rollins, so that makes me sad. But they've been getting, so again, first Jimmy came back to save Roman, and then Jay and Jimmy hugged it out, and there were these giant pops, and then Sami Zayn kind of rejoined the fold. And there's still tension because Roman is still kind of the same character as so he's still a jerk as a character. He just doesn't have the title or the necklace, but he's still kind of a dick. So his character, he's going to have to stop being a jackass to the people around him if they're going to stay beside him and fight, that's good drama for his character. But the number of people who have been all over this big reunion, yes, this is the greatest thing ever. Why aren't you giving this 8s and 9s in your review? Well, one, because it's a full show, not a single segment, first of all. And hey, remember the other things that happened that weren't great? And second, the Bloodline for a long time was the best thing in professional wrestling. Don't get me wrong. I'm not nostalgic for 2 years ago, guys.
Yeah. People, let me tell you how the worst thing that happened to modern culture was the loss of being able to fully adhere to object permanency.
Yeah.
People really fucking struggle with this. We have regressed to some truly horrific toddler behavior, and one of those things is object. Peekaboo! See, I'm gone now. You can't see me because you struggle with object permanency. But here I am again. I've reappeared. And it's if something disappears for not a long time, people act like it's been gone since the turn of the century. And I mean from 18 to 19.
Can I tell you that I heard or saw a bit of a, what was it? I think it was Tail Foundry YouTube channel, really nice one. Did a video about the dangers of nostalgia. It was ostensibly about using nostalgia in storytelling. But one of the conclusions drawn, and somebody else said this, I forget who they were quoting, said, we're going to wind up in a post-nostalgia world. And hang on. And here's why. A very simple, very kind of scary reason.
And then finish your plugs, please.
Because nothing is going to be new long enough for you to get nostalgic for it.
That makes sense.
We're at a point where what we're doing is, hey, here's nostalgia for the 90s to maybe the very early 2000s, right? That's the nostalgia kick right now. That's kind of it. No one's nostalgic for 2010. That's when we started doing 80s nostalgia. We're going to hit the 30-year point And there's nothing to be nostalgic about apart from we will wind up being nostalgic for our nostalgia. And at that point, it's over.
Right.
It's done. We're over. So
Speaking of done,
I cover SmackDown on Fridays. I covered UFC 309. I didn't cover it, sort of. My report for UFC 309 is in the MMA Zone at 411mania.com. John Jones retired Stipe Miocic and probably broke some ribs in the process. In a fight that was almost, in some respects, as pointless as Chandler as Tyson and Paul, but not nearly as sad.
I ended up not watching it. I bet on a bunch of football games, and I also bet on a bunch of UFC fights. In total, I lost 2 out of all the ones I bet on. But I didn't even get to the UFC fights because I bet on, I think it was West Virginia, the Hilltoppers versus, I can't remember what team they played, but they were supposed to win, and even the commentators were like, "There's no reason why they should be losing this game," and yet they are. And they lost 12-7. These people couldn't find the end zone with a fucking flashlight, and I was so fucking mad. How mad was I? I was so mad that I lost that one. I didn't even have a shot of making my bet that I didn't even bother watching the UFC pay-per-view. I ended up watching Kill Bill with my kids. Time better well spent.
Okay, you would have. Let me give you the couple of fights to watch then, if you're curious.
Mm-hmm.
Watch John Jones and Stipe because John massacres that man, and that's usually a good time. That's kind of it. There was one on the prelims.
Has John Jones ever actually lost a fight? Like legitimately lost?
Technically, yes.
Which one was that? Because I don't remember him. I know he's had to give up the title for cocaine and DUIs and shit. But
early in his career in the UFC, he has one loss via disqualification.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, he's never actually been defeated.
No one has. You can argue Reyes should have done it, but no one has legitimately beaten John Jones in the cage.
Right. Yeah, I think that like also haunts Daniel Cormier.
The fact that John now replicated Cormier's achievements has to just kill that man inside.
All right, we're at like 212.
Yeah. So, if you want my thoughts, also I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. Give that a listen if you're interested in the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. I talk about that. I talk about Donald Trump being at the UFC event a little bit because he took up a fair amount of airtime. And I preview this upcoming event. So starting very early in the morning, by which I mean 1 a.m. my time, this Saturday, the UFC is in China and has a good main event for, you know what, honestly, it's an okay card for a fight night. I'm not complaining too much about it. There's 2 light heavyweight fights on the main card though, and that's just mean. Don't do that to the fans. But they're back in Macau, China they're in China for the first time since before COVID. And they're in this arena in particular since, Mark, an event I think you covered. Like, you covered Michael Bisping versus Kung Lee, right?
I think so, yes.
That's how long since they...
I know I covered the girl fight that was like the main event in China.
Okay,
I
forget
assure you I did. Because I think we did it together, as a matter of fact. Yeah,
okay.
I woke up way early in the morning and annoyed the piss out of Melissa for that.
So anyway, first time back there. So there's a full preview of that card as well. And yeah, next week we'll be here for Gladiator 2. Give that a listen. Mark mentioned about the Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 3 review, because those 3 reviews we did turned, much as I joked about, you didn't actually owe me anything related to that, it turns out to have been a good content decision because they've done pretty decent numbers. So thank you to everyone who's watched anything we've done, especially those ones or this.
All right, folks. Thank you for joining us on this it's so funny. Like, whenever Robin and I get together, especially with the amount of guests we have now, we always these shows. This was a really good review. I really enjoyed our conversation. I'm not gonna yell at you this time, but more. It's so funny because like it always feels like not quite the Northman, but it always feels like it's just us. Finally, we can talk, and I'm not so like having to just push the pace of the show because we got to get everyone's shit in. So it was nice. It was nice to just kind of talk with my friend for a little over 2 hours, and I didn't ever have to rush to get off because I don't have a girlfriend to appease. So it's been nice. It's nice just being me and you. And nice being me and you is the phrase that pays here on the Rattles and Broadcasting Network. So for His Royal Highness Robert Winfree, I'm going to get a Sprite Zero. Be well, be safe, and behave.